"I've never had a sweet," the little girl told the millionaire's wife. What she did next was shocking. Comment telling me what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10, and let me know which city you're watching from. I really want to know if you liked my story and get to know you better, so subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The March sun cast its golden light over the bustling streets of Greenwich when Eleanor Vance, 38, stepped out of the upscale patisserie she frequented every Thursday. Her wavy brown hair flowed gently in the warm afternoon breeze, and the scent of Belgian chocolate still clung to her elegant clothes. As the wife of the prosperous chocolate manufacturer Richard Vance, she was accustomed to the refined pleasures of life, but nothing could have prepared her for what was about to happen. On the sidewalk in front of the bakery, a small figure caught her eye. A girl of about 4 years old was sitting alone on a dirty piece of cardboard, her messy blonde hair partially covering her thin face. The child's clothes were rags that had once been a pink dress, now stained and torn in several places. Her bare feet showed calluses and dirt, evidence of a hard life on the streets. Eleanor stopped, touched by an instinctive compassion. She slowly approached the girl, who looked up as she sensed her presence. It was then that Eleanor's world came to a complete stop. The child's eyes were a piercing, familiar green, a shade she knew well but couldn't place from where. There was something in that gaze that struck a deep chord in her heart, a strange feeling of recognition she couldn't explain. "Hello, my angel," Eleanor said softly, crouching down to be at the girl's level. "What's your name?" The child watched her cautiously, as if unaccustomed to the kindness of strangers. "Lily," she murmured in a hoarse voice that seemed too small to express so much weariness. "Lily, what a beautiful name. Are you hungry, my dear?" The girl nodded shyly, and Eleanor felt her heart tighten. "Would you like to eat something sweet? I'm sure they have some delicious treats in that bakery right there." It was then that Lily spoke the words that changed everything. "I've never had a sweet." The sentence came from the child's chapped lips with devastating simplicity. Eleanor stood motionless for a few seconds, processing those 5 words that seemed impossible in a city where her family produced chocolates for the entire country. A 4-year-old child who had never tasted a sweet. The reality of that situation hit her like a punch to the gut. Without hesitation, Eleanor extended her hand to Lily. "Come with me, my dear. We're going to fix that right now." The girl hesitated for only a moment before accepting the outstretched hand. Her small hands were cold and rough, contrasting with the softness of Eleanor's manicured hands. Together they entered the patisserie, where the staff knew Eleanor well and immediately mobilized to serve the unusual pair. As Lily ate a gourmet truffle with her eyes wide with pleasure, Eleanor watched the child's every reaction. There was something in those gestures, in that delicate way of holding the sweet, that awakened fragmented memories she couldn't fully access. The girl held a small rag doll in one hand, a surprisingly well-made doll with intricate embroidery that seemed familiar. "Who made this doll for you?" Eleanor asked, pointing to the toy. "Aunt Carol," Lily replied between bites of the truffle. "She used to make fudge too, but it was different from this." Eleanor felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something in those words, in that name, that echoed in forgotten corners of her mind. She decided she couldn't just let the girl go back to the streets. She called Richard, quickly explaining the situation, and decided to take Lily directly to the Evergreen Chocolates factory. The drive to the factory was silent, with Lily watching everything through the car window with childlike curiosity. When they arrived at the industrial complex that housed the chocolate factory, the girl murmured, "It smells just like Aunt Carol's house." Richard Vance, 42, was an imposing man of medium height with graying hair that was beginning to show the signs of his responsibilities as a businessman. When he saw Eleanor enter the factory accompanied by little Lily, His expression went through several emotions quickly. Surprise, concern, and then something Eleanor couldn't quite identify. "Richard, this is Lily," Eleanor said. Watching her husband's reaction closely, she was alone on the street and, well, she's never had a sweet in her life. Richard knelt before the girl, studying her face with intensity. It was then that he saw the doll she was carrying and was visibly shaken. His eyes fixed on the doll's embroidery, and Eleanor noticed that his hands were trembling slightly. "Where did you get this doll? Little one?" he asked, his voice more tense than usual. "Aunt Carol made it for me," Lily repeated, hugging the doll against her chest. The silence that followed was heavy and full of meanings that Eleanor did not yet understand. Richard exchanged a loaded look with her, a look that said there was much more to this situation than it seemed. The doll Lily carried had embroidery identical to what his late sister Catherine used to do, unique embroidery that she had learned from their Italian grandmother. Catherine had mysteriously disappeared 5 years ago, leaving only unanswered questions and a deep pain in the family's heart. "Eleanor," Richard said quietly, "we need to talk." Richard took Eleanor and Lily to his private office at the factory, a cozy environment that contrasted with the noise of the production machines outside. The walls were decorated with family photos and quality certificates for the chocolates. But Eleanor noticed that Richard avoided looking at a specific photograph on the shelf, an image of a young woman with dark hair and a gentle smile. "Sit here, Lily," Richard said, offering a comfortable armchair to the girl. "How about some chocolates while we talk?" As Lily savored the sweets with evident pleasure, her eyes shining with each new flavor discovery, Richard pulled Eleanor to a corner of the office. His expression was heavy, with a tension she had rarely seen in their 10 years of marriage. "Eleanor, that embroidery on the girl's doll. It's identical to what Catherine used to make," he murmured, keeping his voice low so as not to scare Lily. "They're not similar. They're exactly the same. The same flower pattern, the same type of thread, even the way she tied off the ends." Eleanor felt a cold knot in her stomach. Catherine Vance had been Richard's younger sister, a talented young woman who worked at the factory developing new chocolate flavors. 5 years ago, she had left for a meeting with suppliers in New York City and simply vanished. Her purse and documents were found in a diner on the highway, but there was never any sign of her. The police investigated for months, but the case was eventually filed as an unsolved disappearance. "Do you think there's a connection?" Eleanor asked, watching Lily play with the doll between bites of chocolate. "I don't know, but I intend to find out. This child could be the key to understanding what happened to my sister." Lily, noticing she was being watched, raised her green eyes and smiled shyly. "The chocolate is really good," she said, licking her fingers. "Aunt Carol always said that one day I would taste real chocolate." "Lily," Richard said, approaching carefully, "can you tell me more about this Aunt Carol? Where did you live?" The girl's expression changed immediately. Her shoulders slumped, and she hugged the doll tighter. "She went away," she murmured. "Grandma Marlene said she wasn't coming back." "And who is Grandma Marlene?" Richard insisted gently. "She takes care of me now, but she gets mad when I talk about Aunt Carol. She said I have to forget." Tears began to well up in Lily's eyes. "I don't want to forget. Aunt Carol made fudge and sang me to sleep." Eleanor approached and knelt beside the girl, offering a comforting hug. As she comforted Lily, she noticed something that made her heart race. On the child's right wrist was a small, crescent-shaped scar, almost imperceptible under the accumulated dirt. Eleanor knew that scar because she had the exact same one in the same place. It was a birthmark she had carried since she was a child, a unique feature that had always intrigued her. Her adoptive family could never explain its origin, only saying she already had it when she arrived at the orphanage at the age of 3. "Richard," she called in a trembling voice, "look at this." She discreetly showed him Lily's scar and then lifted the sleeve of her own blouse, revealing the identical mark on her wrist. Richard's eyes widened, immediately understanding the implication of the discovery. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Lily, dear," Eleanor said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Do you remember where you lived before you were with Grandma Marlene?" The girl thought for a moment. "In a blue house with a garden of red roses. Aunt Carol planted the roses and I helped her water them. She said that when I grew up, I would have a garden of my own." Eleanor felt tears well up. Since childhood, she had had recurring nightmares about a blue house with a garden of red roses. Dreams so vivid, they seemed like memories. But her adoptive family always said they were just imagination. The psychologists who treated her in childhood explained that they were fantasies created by a traumatized mind trying to fill memory gaps. "And Grandma Marlene, what is she like?" Richard asked, noticing Eleanor's emotion. "She's very mean. She yells a lot and sometimes leaves me hungry when I can't make money on the street. She said I'm just like my mother, who was good for nothing." Lily's voice grew even lower. "But I don't remember my mother. Only Aunt Carol." The situation was becoming more complex with each revelation. Richard made a quick decision, moved by both compassion and the need to uncover the truth about his missing sister. "Eleanor, we can't let this child go back to that situation, at least not today. Let's take her home and tomorrow we'll contact the proper authorities to better understand the situation." "Lily," Eleanor said softly, "would you like to spend the night at our house? We have a comfortable room and lots of chocolate." The girl's eyes shone with hope, but soon filled with fear. "Grandma Marlene will be very angry if I don't come back. She said that if I run away, she'll find me, and it will be worse." "You're not running away," Richard assured her. "You're being cared for, and I promise we won't let anything bad happen to you." As they left the factory, Eleanor noticed Frank Miller, the company's accountant for 15 years, watching them from a distance with a strange expression. Frank was a thin man in his 50s, always impeccably dressed and known for his efficiency with numbers. There was something in his gaze at that moment that bothered her, but she couldn't identify what. During the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat of the car, clutching her doll. Eleanor watched the child sleep and felt an inexplicable connection growing in her heart. There was something about that girl that awakened not only compassion, but a feeling of maternal protection she had never experienced. "Richard, I know it sounds crazy, but looking at her, it's like looking in a mirror to the past, not just because of the scar, but the way she holds the doll, how her eyebrows furrow when she's thinking." "I know," he replied, watching Lily through the rearview mirror. "And there's something else." When she mentioned fudge made by Aunt Carol, Catherine was working on a special fudge recipe before she disappeared. It was a secret project she hadn't shared with anyone on the team. When they arrived home, a beautiful residence in the city's upscale neighborhood, Lily woke up and observed everything with silent admiration. The house had well-kept gardens and a swimming pool that sparkled under the afternoon lights. "It's like a palace," she murmured, holding Eleanor's hand tightly. That night, after Lily was settled in the guest room with clean clothes and a warm bath, Eleanor and Richard talked late into the night in the kitchen. "Tomorrow, I'll start a discreet investigation," Richard said. "I need to find out who this Marlene is and what Lily's real story is. And what if she's really my niece? What if somehow Catherine was my sister and I never knew? Then we'll find out the truth. But one thing I can guarantee, this child is not going back into the hands of someone who mistreats her." However, what they didn't know was that Frank Miller had made a crucial phone call that same night, alerting someone to Lily's presence at the factory. On the other end of the line, a harsh, irritated voice replied, "I told you to keep that girl away from those places. Now we have a problem." The next morning brought with it a tense atmosphere that Eleanor couldn't explain. Lily had woken up early, sitting on the bed in the guest room, watching the garden through the window with a melancholic expression. When Eleanor came in to call her for breakfast, she found the girl talking softly to her doll. "She said the House of Roses will come back one day," Lily murmured to the doll. "But I think she lied. People always lie." "Good morning, dear," Eleanor said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Did you sleep well?" Lily nodded, but her green eyes were filled with a sadness too deep for a 4-year-old. "I dreamed of Aunt Carol again. She was crying and saying she forgave me for being a bad girl." "You're not a bad girl, Lily. Why do you think that?" "Because Grandma Marlene always says so. She says it was my fault Aunt Carol went away. If I were good, she wouldn't have left." Eleanor felt her heart shatter. She gently hugged Lily, noticing how the child stiffened at the initial contact, as if unaccustomed to genuine affection. At breakfast, Richard received a call that changed the atmosphere in the house. It was his personal lawyer, Mr. Andrew Morris, with information he had obtained overnight through his contacts. "Richard, I got some data on this Marlene Campos," Mr. Morris said with a worried voice. "She has no record of legal guardianship over any child. In fact, she has a problematic history with social services." Richard moved away from the table to continue the conversation in private. "What did you find out?" "Marlene Campos, 58, has already been investigated twice for child exploitation. She was never convicted because the evidence disappeared or the witnesses changed their stories. Apparently, she takes in abandoned children and uses them for begging. There are rumors that she has connections with influential people who protect her." Richard felt anger rising in his chest. "And what about the legality of Lily being with us? For now, you can claim emergency protection of the child, but Marlene could show up at any moment to claim the girl. I suggest you file a formal request for temporary custody as soon as possible." When Richard returned to the table, he found Eleanor and Lily looking through a family photo album. Lily had stopped on a specific page and was staring at a photograph of Catherine. "This lady looks like Aunt Carol," Lily said, pointing to the photo. "But Aunt Carol had a scar here. She touched her own forehead, and she was always very sad lately." Richard and Eleanor looked at each other. The scar Lily described corresponded exactly to a mark Catherine had acquired in a car accident at 15. "Lily," Richard said carefully, "where was Aunt Carol's scar?" The girl touched her own forehead just above her left eyebrow. "Right here." She said it was when she was little that she fell from a tree trying to get a mango. The silence in the room was deafening. Richard remembered the day of Catherine's accident perfectly. She had invented that exact story about the mango so as not to worry their parents, but the family knew the truth about the car accident. "Eleanor, I need to show you something," Richard said, leading her to his home office. There, he opened a personal file and took out a document he had kept for years. It was a medical report for Catherine, dated 6 years ago, proving that she had undergone fertility treatment. "Catherine really wanted to be a mother," Richard explained, his voice choked with emotion. "She never told us who the father was, just said it was someone who couldn't take responsibility. The treatment was successful, and she was pregnant when she disappeared." Eleanor covered her mouth with her hands, understanding the implications. "You think that Lily? I think Lily could be Catherine's daughter, and if the woman she calls Aunt Carol really was my sister, then—" Richard paused, trying to organize his thoughts. "Then something very serious happened 5 years ago." At that moment, the doorbell rang insistently. When Eleanor went to answer it, she found a heavy-set woman in her 50s, with simple clothes and a harsh expression on her face. Next to her was a thin, nervous man she recognized immediately, Frank Miller. "Where is my granddaughter?" the woman demanded in a harsh voice. "I know you brought her here yesterday. You must be Marlene," Eleanor said, standing firm at the door. "I'd like to see some documents proving your guardianship over Lily." Marlene laughed scornfully. "Documents? That girl has been my responsibility for 2 years. I don't need a piece of paper to prove that." Frank stepped forward, visibly uncomfortable. "Mrs. Vance, maybe it's better not to get involved in this situation. Mrs. Marlene is just worried about the child." "And why are you here, Frank?" Richard asked, appearing behind Eleanor. "How did you know Lily was with us?" The accountant stammered a confused answer about hearing comments at the factory, but his nervousness was evident. Marlene cut him off abruptly. "It doesn't matter how I knew. What matters is that you have no right to keep my granddaughter. Lily, come here now." Marlene's voice echoed through the house, and they heard a muffled cry from the living room. When they turned, Lily was hidden behind the sofa, trembling violently and clutching her doll. "I don't want to go," she murmured between sobs. "Please don't make me go. She'll hurt me again." The child's confession was like a bomb. Eleanor immediately went to Lily to console her, while Richard faced Marlene with renewed determination. "The child is afraid of you. That should say everything about the kind of care she receives." "This girl is stubborn and a liar," Marlene retorted, trying to force her way into the house. "She makes up stories to get what she wants. Come here, Lily, or it will be worse when we get home." "You are not taking this child anywhere," Richard declared firmly. "We have reason to believe that Lily is being mistreated under your care." Marlene changed her strategy, adopting a victimized posture. "I raised this girl alone, without help from anyone. I work hard every day to put food on the table. You, with all your wealth, don't understand what real struggle is." "Hard work?" Richard questioned. "What kind of work forces a 4-year-old child to beg on the streets?" Marlene's face hardened even more. "Lily helps me because we are family. She has to learn early on that nothing in life is free." Frank pulled Marlene by the arm, whispering something in her ear. She nodded and backed away slightly. "You think you can do whatever you want because you have money," Marlene said with a venomous voice. "But I'll seek my rights. I know people who will make sure this girl goes back to where she belongs." After Marlene and Frank left, the house fell into a tense silence. Lily remained hidden, refusing to come out from behind the sofa. It took Eleanor almost an hour to convince her that she was safe. "She's going to take me away," Lily whimpered. "And then I'll be without Aunt Carol's doll. Grandma Marlene said she'll burn it if I'm disobedient again." "No one is going to burn your doll, dear," Eleanor promised. "And no one will take you anywhere while we're here to protect you." That afternoon, while Lily napped, emotionally exhausted, Richard made a disturbing discovery in his office at the factory. Reviewing the accounting books from the past few years, he noticed significant discrepancies in expenses related to charitable donations. Frank had recorded regular payments to an institution called Angel's Home, supposedly an orphanage that received donations from the company. When Richard investigated further, he discovered that Angel's Home did not officially exist. There was no record of the institution in any government agency, but the donations had been made monthly for 3 years. His office phone rang, interrupting his investigation. It was an unknown number. "Mr. Richard Vance," a nervous female voice said on the other end of the line. "My name is Anna Peterson. I clean offices downtown. I heard you're looking for information about a girl named Lily." "How did you know that?" Richard asked, immediately on alert. "I know other children who were with Marlene. They told me about a new girl she was raising. If you really want to help Lily, you need to know the truth about what happened to the woman she calls Aunt Carol." Richard's heart sped up. "What do you know?" "I can't talk on the phone. It's too dangerous. But if you meet me tomorrow at 7 in the evening in the parking lot of St. Joseph's Church, I can tell you everything I know. And Mr. Vance, bring the police. You're going to need them." The night brought no rest for the Vance family. Lily woke up several times with nightmares, crying out for her Aunt Carol and begging not to be taken back. Eleanor spent the night by the girl's side, humming lullabies that surprisingly seemed to calm her. It was as if Lily recognized the melodies from somewhere deep in her memory. My mother used to sing like that to me, Lily murmured, during a moment of lucidity between nightmares, before Grandma Marlene said she had gone away forever. The child's words struck Eleanor like lightning. She also had fragmented memories of someone singing those same songs to her when she was little, memories that her adoptive family always said were fantasies created by her traumatized mind. The next morning, Richard decided he couldn't wait until the meeting with Anna Peterson. He drove to the factory, determined to confront Frank about the discrepancies in the accounting books and his strange connection to Marlene. What he found was even more disturbing than he had expected. Frank's office was being emptied, boxes of documents were stacked up, and the accountant himself was nervously destroying papers in an industrial shredder. "Frank, what's going on here?" Richard demanded, entering without ceremony. The accountant jumped, dropping a pile of documents on the floor. "Mr. Vance, I was just organizing old files, doing a cleanup of outdated records, cleanup or destruction of evidence." Richard knelt and picked up some of the fallen papers. They were proof of bank transfers to accounts he didn't recognize. "Explain these transactions to Angel's Home, an institution that, from what I've discovered, doesn't exist." Frank's face turned completely pale. His hands trembled as he tried to gather the scattered papers. "Mr. Vance, you don't understand the situation. There are people involved in this who are very dangerous." "What people? And what exactly is your relationship with Marlene Campos?" Frank hesitated for a long moment, clearly fighting an internal battle. Finally, his resistance broke. "Marlene isn't just a woman who takes in abandoned children. She's part of a larger network. Important people in the city are involved." "What kind of network?" Richard insisted, his voice heavy with authority. "Organized child exploitation," Frank confessed, the words coming out like a guilty whisper. "Marlene provides children for controlled begging. The donations we were making weren't for any orphanage. It was protection money to keep the authorities away from investigations." Richard felt nauseous. "And you participated in this voluntarily?" "No, at least not at first. 3 years ago, I discovered irregularities in the books and confronted the person responsible. They threatened me, said that if I said anything, my family would suffer the consequences." Frank broke down completely, tears streaming down his face. "I have 2 young daughters, Mr. Vance. I couldn't take the risk. Who is responsible? Who is behind this?" "Ronald Dean, the social worker responsible for the central region. He has contacts in City Hall and the local justice system. He's the one who ensures that cases of missing children are quickly filed away or transferred to distant jurisdictions." Richard knew Ronald Dean by sight. He was a man in his 40s, always well-dressed, who often appeared at social events in the city. The idea that he was involved in child exploitation was shocking, but it explained many things. "And Catherine, my sister, what happened to her?" Frank hesitated again, as if weighing the risks of revealing the full truth. "Catherine found out about the scheme by accident. She was investigating suppliers for the factory when she found documents linking some companies to the suspicious transactions. She confronted Ronald directly, and then Ronald threatened her. He said that if she said anything, the child she was expecting would suffer the consequences. Catherine became desperate and agreed to keep quiet, but she demanded guarantees that her baby would be safe. Richard felt a mixture of anger and sadness consume his chest. Where is she now? Is she alive? I don't know for sure. After Lily was born, Catherine was forced into hiding. Ronald said it was temporary, just until the situation cooled down. But that was 4 years ago, and since then... Frank couldn't finish the sentence. The revelation hit Richard like a punch. Lily was truly his niece, Catherine's daughter. All the pain and confusion of the past few years finally made sense. His sister hadn't disappeared voluntarily. She had been forced into hiding to protect her daughter. "Why are you telling me this now?" Richard asked. "Because when I saw Lily at the factory yesterday, I realized the situation had changed. Marlene shouldn't have let her wander the streets near the factory. It was a careless mistake that could expose the whole operation. And now that you're involved." Frank paused, genuinely concerned. Ronald will do anything to protect the scheme. At that moment, Richard's phone rang. It was Eleanor, her voice filled with panic. "Richard, you need to come home now. Lily has disappeared." "What do you mean disappeared?" "She was playing in the garden while I was preparing lunch. When I went out to call her, she was gone. I only found her doll on the ground, as if it had been ripped from her hands." Eleanor's voice broke. "And there's more. There was a note stuck to the gate." "What note?" "The girl is coming home. Don't try to look for her, or it will be worse for her. Forget she ever existed." Richard hung up the phone and turned to Frank, who had heard the whole conversation and was even paler. "They took my niece," Richard said in a controlled voice, "but one filled with a deadly fury, and now you're going to help me get her back. Mr. Vance, you don't understand. If we try to go against them—" "No, Frank, you're the one who doesn't understand. That child is all that's left of my sister, and I will not let the same thing that happened to Catherine happen to Lily." Richard picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Andrew Morris. "Andrew, I need you to contact the FBI immediately and prepare for a war, because that's what this is going to be." While Richard organized his strategy miles away in a dilapidated house on the outskirts of the city, Lily was locked in a dark room, crying for her lost doll and for the people who in just 2 days had become her family. Marlene paced nervously around the house, talking on the phone with someone who clearly intimidated her. "I did what you told me to do," she said in a trembling voice. "The girl is here, but these Vances won't give up easily. They have money and connections." The voice on the other end of the line was cold and calculating. "Then maybe it's time to solve this problem once and for all. If they want to find the child so desperately, let's give them that opportunity, but it will be on our terms." Marlene swallowed hard. She had known Ronald for years and knew that when he spoke in that tone, someone always ended up getting hurt. She looked towards the room where Lily was crying and for the first time in years felt something akin to remorse. "What if they bring the police? Leave the police to me. I have friends in the right places. What you need to worry about is keeping that child quiet until we resolve this permanently." When the call ended, Marlene leaned against the wall, trembling. She knew she had gotten into something much bigger than she could control, and now both she and Lily were disposable pieces in a dangerous game that was about to explode. The Vance home turned into a makeshift operations center. Mr. Andrew Morris had arrived, accompanied by federal agent Brian Carter, a serious man in his 50s who listened attentively to the whole situation while Eleanor wept silently on the sofa, clutching Lily's doll. "We have to be very careful," the agent explained. "If there really is a child exploitation network with branches in the local government, a direct approach could put the child in even greater danger." Richard paced nervously around the room. "Agent, my niece is in the hands of people who have been mistreating her for years. Every minute that passes could be crucial for her safety. I understand your anguish, Mr. Vance, but we need concrete evidence before we can act. Your accountant's confessions are important, but not enough to dismantle an entire organization." It was then that the phone rang. It was Anna Peterson, the cleaning lady who had promised to meet Richard at the church. "Mr. Vance, I can't wait until tonight anymore. I heard they took the girl. I need to talk to you now, but not on the phone." Her voice was filled with fear. "Meet me at the small park behind the bus station in an hour. And sir, bring someone you trust, because after I tell you what I know, my life will be in danger." The agent decided to accompany Richard to the meeting, leaving 2 undercover agents watching the Vance house. During the drive, Frank called with information that complicated the situation even further. "Mr. Vance, I managed to access the files that Ronald tried to hide. There are records of at least 8 children who went through the scheme in the last 3 years. All were officially registered as cases transferred to other jurisdictions. But in reality what, Frank? They simply disappeared from the system. There's no trace of where they ended up." The gravity of the situation hit Richard full force. This wasn't just about exploitation for begging, but something much more sinister. The agent, hearing the conversation, quickened his pace towards the meeting point. Anna Peterson was a thin woman in her 40s, with hands calloused from hard work and eyes that reflected years of silent suffering. When she saw Richard and the agent approaching, she hesitated as if about to flee. "Anna, I'm Richard Vance. This is the trusted person I mentioned," he said, introducing the agent without revealing his role. "I worked as a cleaner in several companies in the city," Anna began, looking around nervously. "2 years ago, I got a job cleaning the office of social worker Ronald Dean. It was there that I discovered terrible things." "What kind of things?" The agent asked. "Ronald has a secret file in a safe in his office. One night, he forgot the safe open and I saw documents with photos of children. They weren't official photos. They were like catalogs." Richard felt his stomach turn. Catalogs? Photos of the children with information about their age, physical characteristics, and prices. Anna paused, clearly traumatized by the memory. There were names of important people from the city next to some photos. The mayor, judges, businessmen. The agent moved closer. "Anna, do you remember any specific names?" "I remember Mayor Arthur Bishop. There were several notes next to his name. And also Judge Owen Fitzgerald, the one who always appears in the newspapers talking about child protection. And what about Catherine Vance? Did you hear anything about her?" Anna nodded sadly. "The woman you call Catherine was known as Carol in recent years. She lived in hiding in a house on the edge of town, taking care of several children that Marlene brought to her. Ronald forced her to care for the children as a kind of punishment for discovering the scheme." Richard held his breath. "Is she alive?" "She was, until 3 months ago. But something happened. Marlene arrived one night very nervous at the house where Catherine lived and said she had to disappear again. She took Lily with her that night. Why didn't Catherine run away with her daughter? Because Ronald threatened to kill other children if she tried to escape. Catherine sacrificed her own freedom to protect not only Lily, but all the others." Anna dried the tears that began to fall. "She asked me to look for her family if anything happened. That's why I'm here." The agent asked a few more questions before Anna left, but she refused to go to the station, saying she didn't trust anyone in the local police. Before leaving, she handed Richard a crumpled piece of paper. "Catherine gave me this. She said that if something happened to her, it was important for the family to know the truth." The paper contained an address and a sentence written in a trembling hand. "Eleanor, forgive me for never looking for you. I didn't know how to explain that we were sisters. Take care of our Lily. Your sister, Clara." Richard read the paper several times before fully understanding. Clara. Catherine's name was Clara, he murmured, and she knew that Eleanor was her sister. "How is that possible?" the agent asked. "Eleanor was adopted as a child. She never knew about her biological family, but if Catherine, Clara, knew they were sisters." Richard stopped walking, a revelation hitting him. That explains why Clara worked at the factory for a few months. She wasn't just looking for a job. She was trying to get closer to Eleanor. And why didn't she reveal herself? Probably because she was already involved with Ronald and his scheme. She knew that revealing the truth would put Eleanor in danger. During the drive back, they received an urgent call from Mr. Morris. Ronald Dean had appeared at the Vance house with a questionable court order, demanding information about Lily and threatening to sue the family for kidnapping. "Don't let him in the house," Richard instructed. "We're coming back now." When they arrived, they found a tense scene. Ronald was at the gate with two local police officers, brandishing documents and speaking loudly about citizens who thought they were above the law. Eleanor was at the door, visibly shaken, but firm in not allowing entry. "Mr. Dean," said the federal agent, showing his identification, "Agent Brian Carter, FBI. I'd like to have a private conversation with you." The change in Ronald's expression was immediate. The man who seconds before seemed in control of the situation suddenly became nervous and started stammering explanations about just doing his duty. "Of course, Agent. But I don't understand why the FBI would be interested in a simple matter of child custody." "Oh, but it's not a simple matter of custody, is it, Mr. Dean? We have reason to believe there's much more involved here." Ronald tried to maintain his composure, but his hands were visibly shaking as he put away the documents. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Then perhaps a conversation in a more formal setting will help clarify things. You can accompany us voluntarily, or we can formalize an invitation." Before Ronald could answer, Marlene's cell phone rang in the house where she held Lily captive. It was a call that would change everything again. "Marlene, this is Clara," a weak voice said from the other end of the line. "I heard you have my daughter. I need to see her." Marlene almost dropped the phone. "Catherine? But how? Ronald said you were..." "Ronald lied to you, just like he lies to everyone. Listen carefully, Marlene. You have one chance to do the right thing for the first time in your life. Bring Lily to the Central Square tomorrow at noon, or I'll tell the police where to find not only you, but everyone else involved in this scheme." The call ended, leaving Marlene in a state of total shock. Catherine was alive, and now everything was going to fall apart. The news that Clara was alive spread quickly among those involved in the operation. Ronald, who was being escorted to the federal station, managed to make a call before his phone was confiscated. In a few minutes, the entire network was on high alert. "We have a serious problem," Ronald told his contacts at City Hall. "The woman who was supposed to be dead for 3 years has just reappeared, and she knows everything." On the other side of town, Clara walked through the streets with difficulty. Years of hiding and fear had taken their physical and emotional toll. She was too thin. Her once shiny hair was now dull and grey, and her hands trembled constantly, a result of the chronic stress of always looking over her shoulder. She had managed to survive by working temporary jobs in neighboring towns, always using fake documents that an old friend had gotten for her. But the pain of being separated from Lily had become unbearable, especially after she learned that her daughter was being mistreated by Marlene. At the Vance home, Eleanor couldn't stop pacing the room. The revelation that she had a living sister, that this sister was Lily's mother, and that she had been trying to get closer years ago, was too overwhelming to process. "How did she know I was her sister?" Eleanor asked Agent Brian Carter, who had returned after leaving Ronald at the federal station. "I didn't even know I had a sister." "She probably did her own investigations," the agent replied. "People who were separated in childhood sometimes spend years looking for lost relatives." Mr. Morris, who was organizing the legal aspects of the case, looked up from his papers. "Eleanor, I managed to contact the institution where you were as a child. They confirm that there was a younger sister who was sent for adoption to another family. Her name was Clara Smith." "Clara Smith," Eleanor repeated, testing the name on her tongue. "Why did our adoptive parents never tell us?" Apparently, it was common practice at the time to separate siblings to facilitate the adoption process. Families preferred to adopt single children, and the institutions thought it would be easier for you to adapt without the memory of each other. Richard approached Eleanor and held her hands. "The important thing is that now you can reunite, and we're going to bring Lily back home." Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Clara was preparing for the most important meeting of her life. She had spent the night in a cheap hotel, but couldn't sleep. The memories of Lily as a baby, the happy moments they had shared before the nightmare began, and especially the guilt for having abandoned her daughter, tortured her constantly. She knew she was taking a huge risk by exposing herself, but she could no longer bear to live in hiding while her daughter suffered. Moreover, she had discovered something that changed everything. Ronald had lied about the deaths of the other missing children. They were alive, but in an even worse situation than she had imagined. In the dilapidated house where Lily was imprisoned, Marlene paced back and forth, making decisions that would define the fate of several people. Clara's call had shattered her illusion of security. Ronald had always assured her that Clara was dead, and discovering she had been deceived made her question everything. "Lily," she called, opening the door to the room where the girl was locked. Your real mother wants to see you." Lily, who was sitting in the corner hugging an old cushion, looked up with eyes red from crying. "My real mother? But I thought Aunt Carol. Aunt Carol was your mother. Yes, I lied to you." Marlene felt strangely vulnerable admitting the truth. Her real name is Clara, and she's alive. "Then why did she leave me with you?" Lily asked, her small voice filled with a pain too deep for her age. Marlene couldn't answer immediately. How could she explain to a 4-year-old that her mother had been forced to give her up to protect her from something even worse? How could she admit that she herself had been complicit in the girl's suffering? She had no choice, Marlene said finally. And now maybe things can be different. That morning, Clara arrived at the central square an hour before the scheduled time. She wanted to observe the place, to make sure it wasn't a trap. The square was bustling with people going to and from work, children playing while their mothers chatted on benches, a normal scene of urban life that she had missed for years. When she saw Marlene approaching with Lily, Clara felt her legs almost give way. Her daughter had grown so much in the months of separation. She was taller, but also visibly thinner. Her golden hair was disheveled, and her clothes were inadequate for a child. Lily saw a thin woman approaching and instinctively hid behind Marlene. She didn't recognize the person as the Aunt Carol she remembered, but there was something familiar in those green eyes that mirrored her own. "Lily?" Clara said, kneeling a few feet away so as not to scare the girl. "It's me, your mother. I know I look different, but it's me." "Aunt Carol?" Lily whispered, hesitant. "Yes, my dear, Aunt Carol. I missed you so much." It was then that Lily ran towards Clara, throwing herself into her arms with full force. Mother and daughter hugged in the middle of the square, crying and laughing at the same time, while Marlene watched with a mixture of relief and fear. "I thought you had gone away forever," Lily sobbed. "Grandma Marlene said you weren't coming back. I never wanted to leave you," Clara replied, holding her daughter tightly. "But bad people forced me to go away. Now I will fight for us to be together again." Marlene approached hesitantly. "Clara, I need to tell you something important. Things have changed. There are people looking for Lily. Good people who want to take care of her." "What people?" "Your sister, Eleanor. She and her husband found Lily on the street a few days ago. They found out the truth about everything." Clara was in shock. "Eleanor? My sister Eleanor? How?" "It's a long story, but they love Lily and have the resources to protect you both." At that moment, Clara noticed suspicious movement near the square. Men in suits who clearly didn't belong in that environment were positioning themselves strategically, blocking the exits. "Marlene, is this a trap?" "No, I didn't know." Marlene had also noticed the men and was genuinely scared. "Ronald must have found out about our meeting." Clara held Lily tightly. "We need to get out of here now." But it was too late. The men approached quickly, and Clara recognized one of them. It was Mayor Arthur Bishop's right-hand man, a man known for solving problems definitively. "Mrs. Clara Smith," he said politely, but with a threatening tone. "The mayor would very much like to have a word with you. There are some pending matters that need to be resolved." "I'm not going anywhere," Clara replied, protecting Lily behind her. "Oh, but you are. You see, we brought some photos that might interest you." He showed photographs of other children that Clara recognized immediately. They were the children she had cared for years, the same ones Ronald said were in safe adoptive families. "Where are they?" Clara demanded. "In a safe place for now, but their safety depends on your cooperation." Clara understood immediately that she was being blackmailed again, but this time the situation was even more complex. It wasn't just about her freedom and Lily's safety, but the lives of several other innocent children. "What do you want?" "Simple. You will disappear again, this time forever, and you will take with you all the secrets you know about certain important people in this city. And if I refuse, then the children in the photos will start to disappear one by one, and your daughter will be the first." Marlene watched the scene with growing horror, realizing she had completely underestimated the gravity of the situation she was involved in. These people weren't just corrupt, they were dangerous in a way she had never imagined. Clara looked at Lily, who was clinging to her leg, clearly sensing the danger in the air, even without fully understanding what was happening. "Mommy, I'm scared," Lily whispered. "I know, my dear, but Mommy will take care of you." Clara made a desperate decision. She whispered something in Marlene's ear, who nodded nervously, and then addressed the men. "I'll go with you, but I want guarantees that my daughter will be safe. Your daughter is coming with us too. We can't take any risks." It was then that the siren of the federal police echoed through the square. The sound of approaching sirens made the mayor's men hesitate for a few crucial seconds. Clara took advantage of the distraction to pick up Lily in her arms and start running towards the only exit that was not yet blocked. Marlene, in an impulse of redemption that she herself couldn't explain, created a distraction by screaming and pretending to faint, forcing the men to split up. "This way!" Clara shouted, running between the park benches while carrying Lily. The girl clung to her mother's neck, scared by all the confusion. The federal agents arrived just in time to see Clara disappearing among the trees surrounding the square. Agent Brian Carter advanced quickly towards the men in suits who were trying to blend in with the crowd that had formed. "FBI, nobody leaves the square," he ordered as his agents surrounded the area. The mayor's right-hand man tried to maintain his composure, but he was visibly nervous. "Agent, I believe there's a misunderstanding. We are City Hall employees on official business. What kind of official business involves threatening a woman and a 4-year-old child? We don't know what you're talking about. Then maybe a search of your phones will clarify things." While the situation unfolded in the square, Clara ran through the city's side streets, trying to put as much distance as possible between them and the men pursuing them. Lily was scared but trusted her mother completely. "Where are we going, Mommy?" she asked between sobs. "To a safe place, my dear. We're going to find people who will help us." Clara knew only one place where she could get real help, the chocolate factory. She knew that Richard and Eleanor would be willing to protect them, even if it meant putting themselves in danger. More importantly, they had the resources to fight against powerful people. When she finally arrived at the Evergreen Chocolates factory, Clara was exhausted and Lily had fallen asleep in her arms. The security guard at the gate recognized her as the former cleaner and, after a quick call to Richard, let them in. Richard was in his office when he received the alert about Clara being at the factory. He and Eleanor ran to meet them, and what they saw moved them deeply. Clara was visibly weakened by years of flight and suffering, but her eyes shone when she saw Eleanor. "Lena," Clara whispered, using the nickname her sister had as a child. "You've grown so much." Eleanor approached hesitantly, studying the face of the woman who was her sister. There were undeniable similarities. The same green eyes, the same curve of the nose, similar gestures. but it was like looking at a devastated version of herself. "Clara," Eleanor said, tears starting to fall. "Why did you never look for me before? I worked here for years." "I looked," Clara replied, her voice weak but filled with emotion. "I worked here as a cleaner for 3 months, 3 years ago. Every night I would watch you from a distance, trying to gather the courage to introduce myself. Why didn't you?" "Because I was being threatened by Ronald. He said that if I tried to get close to my family, you would suffer too. I thought keeping my distance was the only way to protect you." Richard interrupted gently. "Clara, we need to know exactly what happened. Our niece was kidnapped, and there are very dangerous people after you. I know. They have other children too. Ronald and the mayor. They're involved in something much more serious than you can imagine." "What do you mean?" Clara hesitated, looking at Lily, who was still asleep in her arms. "The children who disappear. They aren't just used for begging. Some are sold." The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor covered her mouth with her hands while Richard felt a murderous rage building in his chest. "Sold to whom?" he asked. "Rich people from other cities, even other countries. People who want children but don't want to go through the legal processes. Ronald forges documents, creates false identities, and the children simply vanish from the system. And you've known this all this time. I found out by accident when I was pregnant with Lily. Ronald needed me to keep quiet, so he offered me a deal. I would help care for some of the children, and in return, Lily would be safe. But when she was born, I realized that eventually she would be sold too. Is that why you ran away?" "I tried, but they found me and threatened to hurt not only Lily, but all the other children under my care. So I agreed to go into hiding and let Marlene take care of Lily temporarily, hoping that eventually I could find a way to get us all out of this." Richard shook his head. "Clara, you don't understand. You spent years hiding while your daughter was being mistreated. You think I don't know that?" Clara exploded, her voice finally showing the anger she had suppressed for years. "Do you think a single night went by without me thinking of her? I sacrificed my own happiness to try to protect not only her, but 8 other children. And now they are all in danger because I finally decided to fight back." Eleanor placed herself between them. "Stop. Fighting won't help anyone now. We need to focus on protecting Lily and finding these other children." It was then that Frank burst into the office, his face pale with terror. "Mr. Vance, we have a huge problem. I just got a call from a contact at City Hall. The mayor is organizing a massive search for Clara and Lily. They're telling everyone that Clara is a dangerous kidnapper and that Lily is in grave danger." "What?" "They're twisting the situation. Now Clara is being portrayed as the criminal who stole Lily from her loving caregiver Marlene. Everyone in the city will be looking for them." Clara sat down heavily in a chair, realizing that the situation had become even more impossible. "They are very smart. Now if anyone sees us together, they'll think I'm a criminal." "No," Richard said firmly. "We are not going to let them control the narrative. I have resources and connections too. We will fight back." "How?" Clara asked. "They have the mayor, judges, police officers. What do we have? We have the truth. And we have federal agents who have already started investigating. Besides," Richard paused, an idea forming in his mind. "We have something they don't expect." "What?" "We have you. You are a witness who can testify about everything. And more importantly, you know where the other children are being held." Clara's eyes widened. "I can't. If I testify, those children will disappear forever. Maybe even—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Not if we act fast enough. Agent Carter has resources for simultaneous operations. We can rescue the children at the same time we expose the network. It's too risky. Everything is risky now. But running and hiding didn't work for you before. It's time to fight." Lily woke up during this conversation, looking around in confusion at all the unfamiliar faces, except for her mother's. When she saw Eleanor, however, something connected. "You're the lady from the bakery," she said softly. "You gave me chocolate." Eleanor knelt beside her. "Yes, dear. And I'm also your aunt. Your mother and I are sisters." Lily looked between Clara and Eleanor, studying their faces. "You look alike," she said finally. "But why are you both crying?" "Because we're happy to finally be together," Eleanor explained, "and because we're going to make sure nothing bad ever happens to you again." "Promise? I promise," Eleanor said. But even as she spoke the words, she could hear sirens approaching the factory again. This time, however, they weren't coming to rescue. They were coming to arrest Clara for kidnapping. The sound of sirens grew louder as they approached the factory. Richard quickly activated the building's security system, closing all automatic entrances and buying a few precious minutes. Clara held Lily tightly, knowing that if she were arrested now, she would probably never see her daughter again. "There's an emergency exit at the back of the factory," Richard said quickly. "It leads to a private parking lot where I have a spare car. You can escape through there." And then, "Where do we go?" Clara asked, desperation clear in her voice. "I know a safe place," intervened Mr. Morris, who had arrived moments before. "I have a country house in Stamford, 2 hours from here. It's registered in my ex-wife's name, so it won't show up in any searches connected to me." Eleanor approached her sister. "Clara, I'm going with you." "No," Clara said firmly. "If you disappear too, they'll suspect you're helping me. It's better for you to stay here and act normally. I can't let you go alone again." "Yes, you can, because now I know you exist, that you're fighting for us. That gives me the strength to go on." The sirens stopped outside the building. Through the windows, they could see several local police cars surrounding the factory. It wasn't Agent Carter, but local officers who were clearly following orders from City Hall. "Richard Vance," a magnified voice shouted. "We know the kidnapper Clara Smith is in there. Hand her over voluntarily, and no one will get hurt." "Kidnapper," Clara muttered bitterly. "They really have flipped the whole situation." Lily, frightened by all the noise, began to cry softly. Clara comforted her, humming the same lullaby that Eleanor vaguely remembered from childhood. "My dear," Clara said softly to her daughter, "remember the hiding game we used to play in the Blue House? We're going to play it again, okay? You're going to be very quiet while Mommy talks to some people." Richard pointed the way to the emergency exit. "Frank knows the whole factory. He'll guide you to the car." Frank, who had been silent throughout the conversation, finally spoke up. "Mr. Vance, if I help Clara escape, I'll become a criminal in the eyes of the local law." "Frank, you're already a criminal in the eyes of federal law for participating in Ronald's scheme," Richard replied dryly. "The only difference is that now you can choose to do the right thing." The accountant hesitated for a moment, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. "Let's go. I know a way through the maintenance tunnels that leads directly to the parking lot." While Clara, Lily, and Frank prepared to leave, Richard and Mr. Morris quickly discussed the legal strategy. "Andrew, I need you to contact Agent Carter immediately. He needs to know that the local police are acting under corrupt orders. I'm already on it. But Richard, even if we can prove Clara's innocence, we still have the problem of the other children. If she disappears again, we lose our main witness." "We won't lose her," Richard said with determination. "But first we need to keep her alive and free." Clara said a quick goodbye to Eleanor, promising they would communicate through Mr. Morris. The two sisters hugged briefly, and Eleanor could feel how thin and fragile Clara was. "Clara," Eleanor whispered, "when this is all over, we'll rebuild our family. We'll get back all the lost years." "I hope so," Clara replied, but there was a sadness in her voice that suggested she didn't fully believe it. They left through the maintenance tunnels, leaving Richard and Eleanor to face the local police. When the officers finally managed to enter the factory, they found only the couple and Mr. Morris, who vehemently denied having seen Clara. "Search everything," ordered the officer in charge. "If they're hiding a criminal, we'll find out." The search of the factory lasted 2 hours, but they found no sign of Clara or Lily. During that time, Agent Carter arrived on the scene, clearly irritated by the uncoordinated operation. "Captain Miller," he said coldly to the local officer in charge, "can you explain to me why you are conducting an operation in my jurisdiction without prior coordination?" "Agent, we are just following a court order to locate a kidnapper and a child in danger." "What court order? Issued by which judge?" The captain hesitated, realizing there was a problem. "Judge Owen Fitzgerald issued the order this morning." "The same Judge Owen Fitzgerald, who is under federal investigation for corruption. That order is invalid. Withdraw your teams immediately." Meanwhile, 60 miles away, Clara, Lily, and Frank arrived at Mr. Morris's country house. It was a simple but comfortable property, surrounded by coffee plantations and isolated enough to offer temporary safety. "Mummy, this place looks like the Blue House," Lily commented, observing the garden that surrounded the property. "Yes, my dear. And here we can plant roses again if you want." Frank checked the house to make sure it was safe before communicating with Mr. Morris via a secure phone. "We arrived safely. The house is perfect," he reported. "Great. Now, Frank, you need to make an important decision. Clara will need your full protection and cooperation so we can dismantle Ronald's scheme." "I understand. I'm prepared to do my part." During the first few days at the country house, Clara began to open up about specific details of the child exploitation scheme. She revealed to Frank the exact locations where other children were being held, the names of people involved, and even the bank accounts used for the transactions. "There's a house on the outskirts of Hartford where Ronald keeps the older children," Clara explained, her voice heavy with pain. "They are trained for advanced begging and other activities." "Other activities?" Frank asked, though he feared the answer. "Some are forced to steal, others are prepared for illegal adoption by families who pay a lot of money not to ask questions about their origin." "And Mayor Arthur Bishop? What exactly is his role?" "He provides political and legal protection. In return, he receives a percentage of the profits and access to the children for his own purposes." Frank felt nauseous. "What purposes?" Clara couldn't answer verbally, but her look said it all. Some truths were too horrible to be expressed in words, especially with Lily playing in the nearby yard. In the city, Eleanor was having a hard time maintaining normality. Every day without news of Clara and Lily was torture. She had tried to resume her routine, but everywhere she went, she felt people whispering about the scandal at the chocolate factory. "People are saying you harbored a criminal," her best friend, Julia, told her during a tense lunch. "People don't know the truth," Eleanor replied defensively. "What is the truth, Lena? Because even I'm confused about what really happened." Eleanor desperately wanted to tell Julia everything, but she knew that the fewer people who knew, the safer Clara would be. Instead, she changed the subject and tried to act as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But the social pressure was affecting everyone. At the factory, some employees began to question Richard's integrity. Suppliers started cancelling contracts, concerned about their reputation. The company that had been built over decades was starting to crumble under the weight of the accusations. "Richard," Mr. Morris said during a meeting at night, "we have to consider the possibility that the mayor will try to destroy you financially, to force a confession or discredit any future testimony from Clara." "Let him try," Richard replied grimly. "I'd rather lose everything than abandon my niece. But if you lose the company, you also lose your ability to protect Clara and Lily financially." It was an impossible dilemma. Every decision seemed to lead to greater danger for everyone they loved. It was then that they received a call that changed everything again. "Richard," said Frank's frantic voice over a secure line, "they've found us. We have minutes before they get here." Frank's call cut off abruptly, leaving Richard and Mr. Morris in total desperation. They knew there wasn't enough time to organize a rescue operation before Clara and Lily were captured again. "How did they find out where they were?" Richard asked, already grabbing his car keys. "It doesn't matter now," Mr. Morris replied. "What's important is that we have to act quickly." At the country house, Frank had seen the cars approaching on the dirt road. There were at least 3 vehicles, including one he recognized as belonging to Mayor Arthur Bishop. Clara was in the yard with Lily when he ran to warn them. "Clara, take Lily and run into the woods behind the house. I'll try to buy some time. And you, what will you do? I'll say you've already left. Maybe they'll believe it and go in another direction." Clara hesitated. Trusting Frank was a huge risk, considering he had been part of Ronald's scheme for years. But there were no other options. "Lily, remember our hide-and-seek game? We're going to play it one more time." The girl nodded, though she could feel the fear in her mother's voice. They ran towards the dense vegetation that surrounded the property, while Frank positioned himself on the porch, trying to look calm. The cars stopped in front of the house, and several men got out quickly. Mayor Arthur Bishop was among them, his expression serious and determined. Ronald Dean was also present, having apparently managed to get out of federal custody temporarily. "Frank Miller," the mayor said, approaching the porch, "we thought we might find you here. Mayor Bishop, what a surprise to see you here. Can I help you with something?" "You can. We're looking for Clara Smith and her daughter. We have information that you brought them to this location." Frank tried to maintain his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about. I just came here to rest a bit from the confusion in the city." Ronald stepped forward, clearly impatient. "Stop the act, Frank. We know you're helping that woman, and we know she has information that can harm many important people. If she has information, why don't you let her talk to the proper authorities? Why all this persecution?" "Because," the mayor said calmly, "some information is too dangerous to be revealed. It could destroy entire families, ruin reputations built over decades, and the lives of these children, don't they matter?" "The children are being well cared for," Ronald lied shamelessly. "The problem is that Clara Smith is mentally unstable. She creates fantasies about situations that don't exist." Meanwhile, in the woods, Clara and Lily were hiding behind a large tree, listening to the conversation from a distance. Lily was scared and started to whimper softly. "Shh, my dear," Clara whispered. "Remember that in our game we have to be very quiet." "Mommy, why are those bad men looking for us?" "Because they don't want Mommy to tell the truth about bad things they did." "What bad things?" Clara didn't know how to explain to a 4-year-old the complexity and horror of what she had witnessed. They hurt other children, like they hurt you when you were with Grandma Marlene. Back at the house, the situation was escalating. The mayor's men had started searching the property, looking for signs that Clara and Lily had been there. "We found children's clothes in the bedroom," one of the men reported. "And there's food for 3 people in the fridge," added another. The mayor turned to Frank with a dangerous expression. "Frank, I'm going to give you one last chance to cooperate. Where are they? I already told you I don't know." "Very well, then we'll do this the hard way." The mayor signaled to his men, who immediately grabbed Frank, forcing him into a chair on the porch. One of them took out a phone and showed Frank a photo that made his blood run cold. It was a photo of his 2 young daughters, Larissa and Beatrice, 6 and 8 years old, leaving school. "Beautiful girls," the mayor commented casually. "It would be a shame if something happened to them because their father made the wrong decisions." Frank felt the world crumble around him. He had tried to do the right thing, but now his own daughters were being threatened. "You can't do this," he said, his voice trembling. "We can do whatever is necessary." Ronald replied coldly. You participated in our scheme for 3 years. Now you want to play the hero? It doesn't work that way. What do you want? Simple. Call Clara and tell her to come here. Tell her the situation has changed, that there's an opportunity to resolve everything peacefully. Frank knew it was a lie, but the image of his daughters in danger was unbearable. With trembling hands, he took his cell phone and called the number Clara had given him for emergencies. In the woods, Clara heard the phone ring and hesitated to answer. Something about the situation wasn't right. Hello? Clara, it's me, Frank. The situation has changed. We've reached a negotiation. The mayor wants to talk to you peacefully. He has guaranteed there is no danger. Clara immediately realized something was wrong. Frank's voice was too tense, too formal. Frank, is everything all right? It is. Come back to the house. It's our chance to resolve this definitively. I understand, Clara said, hanging up the phone. She knew it was a trap, but she also realized that Frank was being coerced. She looked at Lily, who was watching her with complete trust, expecting her mother to know what to do. My dear, I need you to be very brave now. What are we going to do, Mommy? We're going to separate for a little while. You're going to stay hidden here, very quiet, while I go help Uncle Frank. I don't want to be alone. I know, my love, but sometimes mothers have to protect their children in a special way. Remember your doll? The one Mommy made for you? Lily nodded, unconsciously touching the place where she used to carry the doll before it was lost in the confusion of the square. That doll had a special power. It protected you when I wasn't around. Now you're going to be strong like the doll, okay? Clara hugged her daughter tightly, knowing this could be the last time she would see her. If I don't come back in 2 hours, you walk in that direction, she said, pointing west, until you find a road. Then you stop the first car you see and say you want to talk to Eleanor Vance, understood? I understand, Mommy. I love you more than anything in the world, Lily. Never forget that. Clara kissed her daughter's forehead and began to walk back towards the house, knowing she was surrendering to people who would have no mercy. But it was the only way to protect Lily, and perhaps the other children still trapped in the scheme. When she emerged from the woods and the men saw her, there was a moment of evident satisfaction on their faces. Clara Smith, the mayor said with false cordiality, I'm glad you decided to be reasonable. Where is my daughter? One of the men asked. In a safe place, Clara replied. And she'll stay safe if you keep your part of the deal. What deal? The mayor asked, confused. The deal we made with Frank, my freedom in exchange for my silence about everything I know. Ronald laughed bitterly. There was no deal, Clara. You're going to come with us, and you're going to tell us exactly where all the documents and evidence you've collected over the years are. And then... He didn't need to finish the sentence. Clara understood perfectly that they didn't expect her to leave that situation alive. And the other children, will you release them? The other children are not your problem, the mayor said. Your problem is your daughter, and she will only be safe if you cooperate fully. It was then that Clara made the bravest decision of her life. She looked directly at the mayor and said, Then you have a problem, because I would rather die than help you continue to hurt innocent children. The silence that followed was tense and threatening. Clara knew she had signed her own death sentence, but for the first time in years, she felt truly free. Clara's brave declaration had the effect of a bomb on the men present. Mayor Arthur Bishop, accustomed to having absolute control over situations, was visibly irritated by the unexpected resistance. Ronald approached Clara with a threatening expression. You don't understand the gravity of the situation, Clara. We're not playing here. I understand perfectly, she replied, keeping her voice firm, despite the fear she felt. You have exploited, mistreated, and sold innocent children for years. And now you're afraid the truth will come out. The truth? The mayor laughed bitterly. The truth is, you are a mentally unstable woman who abandoned her own daughter. Who will believe the word of someone like you? The evidence I've collected over the years will speak for itself. What evidence? Ronald asked, suddenly more attentive. Clara realized she had made a mistake by mentioning evidence, but decided to use it to her advantage. Photos, documents, recordings of conversations, all kept in a safe place. Where? If I tell you that, you'll kill me immediately. At least now I'm still useful alive. It was at that moment they heard the distant sound of approaching helicopters. Agent Brian Carter had managed to track the location through Frank's phone signal and was arriving with reinforcements. "Damn it," the mayor muttered. "How did they find out?" Ronald grabbed Clara's arm forcefully. "We're getting out of here, now." "I'm not going anywhere," Clara protested. "You are, because if you don't, we'll look for your daughter in the woods, and I guarantee she won't survive the search." Clara's heart raced. They knew Lily was hiding in the woods. She had no choice but to cooperate, at least temporarily. Meanwhile, hidden behind the tree, Lily heard the noise of the helicopters getting louder. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew her mother was in danger. Going against Clara's instructions, she began to move towards the house, wanting to help in some way. The mayor's men forced Clara into one of the cars, along with Frank, who was visibly tormented by the situation. The helicopters were getting closer as the convoy began to move down the dirt road. "Where are we going?" Clara asked. "To a place where we can talk more privately," the mayor replied. "And the children you're holding captive? What will happen to them? That's not your problem anymore." But Clara knew this meant the other children were in mortal danger. If the scheme was being exposed, those responsible would eliminate all evidence, including the victims themselves. 20 minutes later, the helicopters landed on the abandoned property. Agent Brian Carter descended quickly, followed by a team of federal agents. They found the house empty, but there were clear signs that several people had been there recently. "Search everything," the agent ordered. "Look for any clue as to where they went." It was then that one of the agents shouted from the woods, "Agent, I found a child!" Lily was hidden behind the tree, trembling with fear and cold. When she saw the uniforms, she didn't know if they were good or bad people. In the last few days, she had learned that adults couldn't always be trusted. The agent approached slowly, speaking in a gentle voice. "Hi, dear. What's your name?" "Lily," she whispered. "Lily, where is your mommy?" "The bad men took her. She told me to stay hidden here." "What bad men? Can you describe them to me?" With the typical innocence of children, Lily described the mayor and Ronald in detail, including physical characteristics that confirmed the agent's suspicions about who was involved. "Lily, do you know Eleanor Vance?" The girl's eyes lit up for the first time. "I do. She gave me chocolate and she's Mommy's sister. We'll take you home then." Meanwhile, in the city, Richard and Eleanor were desperate. "Mr. Morris had confirmed that federal agents were on the property, but there was still no news about Clara. Did they find anything?" Eleanor asked anxiously when Mr. Morris hung up the phone. "They found Lily. She's fine and is being brought here." Eleanor let out a sigh of relief, but immediately became worried. "And Clara? If Lily is alone, it means we don't know yet. But the fact that Lily was hidden suggests that Clara managed to protect her before whatever happened." 2 hours later, an official car stopped in front of the Vance home. Eleanor ran outside and saw Lily getting out of the vehicle, accompanied by Agent Brian Carter. The girl immediately ran into Eleanor's arms. "Aunt Lena!" she cried, using a pet name that came naturally. "The bad men took my mum." "I know, my dear, but you're safe with us now." The agent approached with a serious expression. "Mrs. Vance, we need to talk about the situation. Clara was kidnapped by Mayor Arthur Bishop and Ronald Dean. We have teams looking for them, but what? But they have considerable resources and know the area well. It might take time to locate them. And in the meantime, What happens to Clara? We're doing everything we can. But there's something important Lily told us. Clara mentioned she had evidence stored in a safe place. This could be crucial to dismantling the entire network. Richard joined the conversation. What kind of evidence? Documents, photos, recordings? Material that could incriminate not only the mayor and Ronald, but other important people in the city. And where would this evidence be? We don't know. Clara didn't reveal the location. Lily, who was listening to the adults' conversation, suddenly remembered something important. Aunt Lena. Mommy hid a little box at our old house. The blue house with the rose garden. Everyone turned to her. What little box, dear? Eleanor asked. A little metal box with important photos and papers. She said if anything happened, I should tell someone I trust where it was hidden. The agent knelt down to Lily's level. Do you remember where she hid the box? I do. She buried it under the biggest red rose bush on the left side of the house. Lily, where is this blue house? The girl described as best she could the place where she had lived her first few years with Clara. Based on her description, the agent was able to identify a specific area on the outskirts of the city. We'll organize a search immediately, he said. If we can get that evidence, we'll have enough material to arrest the entire network and force Clara's release. But what they didn't know was that Clara, at that very moment, was being taken to an isolated farm 100 miles from the city, where the mayor planned to force her to reveal not only the location of the evidence, but also all the details she knew about other people involved in the scheme. Clara, the mayor said when they arrived at the farm, I'll be direct with you. We have ways of making people talk. I would much prefer you cooperate voluntarily, and I would much prefer you stop destroying the lives of innocent children, Clara replied, maintaining her courage despite the obvious danger. You don't understand. What we did was provide opportunities. These children were abandoned with no future. We gave them chances to live in families that could offer better conditions, by selling them like merchandise, by providing adoptions for families who truly wanted children. It's different. Clara looked at the mayor with disgust. You are monsters, and when the truth comes out, the whole city will know what kind of people you really are. The truth, said Ronald, joining the conversation, is that you are going to disappear, just like other people who tried to interfere with our business. Other people? How many people have you killed? The silence that followed was more revealing than any words could have been. Clara realized she was dealing with people who had crossed lines she never imagined existed, but somewhere in her heart, she still had hope. Lily was safe with Eleanor, and maybe, just maybe, the evidence she had hidden years ago would be found in time to bring justice for all the children who had suffered. The search for the Blue House began at dawn the next day. Agent Brian Carter had organized a specialized team to locate and excavate the area indicated by Lily. Eleanor insisted on accompanying the operation, taking the girl with her to help identify the exact location. Are you sure this is it, dear? Eleanor asked when they arrived at an abandoned property on the outskirts of the city. The house was in ruins, with peeling paint and broken windows, but it still retained the faded blue color Lily remembered. Yes, Aunt Lena. This is our house, Lily replied sadly, but it's very ugly now. The garden that had once been carefully maintained by Clara was completely overgrown with weeds. Even so, it was possible to identify the remains of the rose bushes she had planted with such care. There! Lily pointed to a specific corner of the garden. The biggest rosebush was right there. The agents began to carefully excavate the indicated area. After 2 hours of meticulous work, one of them shouted, "I found something!" It was a metal box the size of a shoebox, wrapped in plastic bags to protect it from moisture. When they opened it, they found a treasure trove of evidence that Clara had collected over the years. There were photographs of forged documents, audio recordings of conversations between Ronald and others involved, bank statements showing the financial transactions, and a detailed list with the names of all the children who had gone through the scheme, including the destinations where they were sent. "My God," the agent murmured as he examined the documents. "Clara documented everything. This is enough to dismantle the entire network." But what shocked everyone the most was finding forged adoption documents for Lily herself in the box. Clara had discovered that Ronald planned to sell her to a family abroad, and that was what motivated her to run away with her daughter initially. "Aunt Lena," Lily said, looking at the photos in the box, "these are the other children who lived with us in the big house." Eleanor looked at the photographs and felt her heart break. They were children of various ages, all with the same expression of sadness and fear that Lily had when they found her on the street. "Agent, these children, where are they now?" "That's exactly what we're going to find out. With this evidence, I can get search warrants for all the locations mentioned in the documents." Meanwhile, at the isolated farm, Clara was being interrogated by Ronald and the mayor. They had spent the night trying to force her to reveal where the evidence was, but she remained firm in her silence. "Clara, you're being very stubborn," the mayor said, clearly frustrated. "We know you have documents that incriminate us. You'd better tell us where they are before we lose our patience. I already told you, I will not help you continue to hurt children. You don't understand. If these documents reach the authorities, many important people will be harmed. People who have families, reputations to protect, and the families of the children you destroyed. Don't they deserve justice?" Ronald approached with a cruel expression. "Clara, I'm going to be very clear with you. We have contacts in several cities. If you don't cooperate, we can make your daughter disappear again, and this time she won't be found." The threat to Lily made Clara waver for a moment, but she knew that giving in now would mean condemning her to an even worse life. "You are cowards. You threaten an innocent child because you know you have no real power over me." "We have no power? We'll see," the mayor said, picking up his phone. He made a call and spoke for a few minutes in a low voice. When he hung up, there was a cruel smile on his face. "Clara, I've just given orders for some people to visit the Vance home. If you don't start talking in the next few minutes, your daughter is going to have a very unfortunate accident." Clara's blood ran cold, but before she could respond, they heard the sound of sirens rapidly approaching the farm. "What the hell is that?" Ronald asked, running to the window. It was several cars from the FBI surrounding the property. Agent Brian Carter was coordinating the operation through a megaphone. "Arthur Bishop and Ronald Dean, you are surrounded. Come out with your hands up." The mayor turned to Clara with fury. "You set this up. I was here with you the whole time. How could I have set anything up?" The truth was that the agent had managed to track the location through the signals from the kidnappers' cell phones. The evidence found in the Blue House had provided enough information to obtain arrest warrants and locate everyone involved. "You have 5 minutes before we enter by force," the agent shouted. "Release the hostage and surrender peacefully." Ronald was in a total panic. "Mayor, what do we do? Calm down. We still have a card up our sleeve." He turned to Clara. "If they come in here, you don't leave alive. If you kill me, you'll have to explain my body to the federal agents. I don't believe you're stupid enough to do that. You underestimate what desperate people are capable of." But before they could take any drastic action, the farmhouse door was broken down and federal agents stormed the place. Clara was immediately freed, and the mayor and Ronald were arrested. "Clara, are you okay?" the agent asked. "I am, but there are children in danger. You need to act quickly to rescue them before the other members of the network try to eliminate them. We are already organizing. Based on the evidence we found, we've identified 3 locations where children might be held. Simultaneously, rescue operations were launched in different parts of the city. In the first location, a warehouse behind a mechanic's shop, they found 5 children, aged between 3 and 10, living in deplorable conditions. In the second location, a seemingly normal house in a residential neighborhood, they discovered that the owner, a woman named Teresa Campos, Marlene's sister, kept 4 children locked in rooms at the back of the house, forcing them to beg during the day and confiscating all the money they collected. The third location revealed the most shocking situation: a farm 50 miles from the city where older children were forced to work in slave-like conditions, being prepared for illegal adoption by families who paid very high amounts not to ask questions about their origin. In total, 17 children were rescued that day. Some had been missing for years, given up for dead by their families. Others were true orphans who had been illegally removed from official institutions. When Clara was finally reunited with Lily at the Vance home, it was a moment of overwhelming emotion. Mother and daughter hugged and cried together, while Eleanor and Richard watched with tears in their eyes. "Mommy, are you hurt?" Lily asked, noticing some bruises on Clara's face. "I'm fine, my love. What matters is that we're together again. And we'll never be separated again." Clara looked at Eleanor, who nodded encouragingly. "No, my dear, we have a family now, a real family that will protect us." But even in this moment of joy, Clara knew there was still a lot of work ahead. The children who had been rescued would need medical care and psychological support. Many of them were so traumatized that it would be difficult to reintegrate them into normal society. And there was still the issue of other powerful people in the city who might have been involved, but whose names did not appear in the evidence. The scheme had been larger and more complex than anyone had imagined. "Clara," said Agent Brian Carter, joining the group, "we're going to need your testimony to ensure that everyone involved is properly prosecuted." "I understand. I'm ready to tell everything. But first, you and Lily need time to recover. This has been traumatic for both of you." That night, for the first time in years, Clara slept peacefully, knowing that her daughter was safe and that finally justice would be served for all the children who had suffered. 6 months after the events that forever changed the lives of so many people in Greenwich, the city was still recovering from the shock of the revelations. The trial of Ronald Dean, Mayor Arthur Bishop, and the others involved in the child exploitation network had become the most watched case in the region, drawing national attention to the corruption that had infiltrated local institutions. Clara sat on the porch of the new house that Richard and Eleanor had bought for her and Lily, located just 3 blocks from the Vance's main residence. It was a simple but cozy house, with a garden where Clara had once again planted her beloved red roses. Lily played in the yard, her crystal-clear laughter echoing through the afternoon air, a sound Clara had thought she would never hear again. "Mommy, look what I planted!" Lily shouted, running towards the porch with her hands dirty with soil, holding a small sunflower seedling that Eleanor had given her. "How beautiful! My dear, where do you want to plant it? Right next to the roses, so they can have company." Clara smiled, watching how her daughter had changed in recent months. The haunted look had completely disappeared, replaced by the natural curiosity of a 5-year-old who now felt truly safe. Lily attended a private school that Richard had carefully chosen, where she received specialized psychological support along with her regular education. "Aunt Clara," a familiar voice called from the gate. It was Camilla, one of the children rescued during the operations, who had been reunited with her grandmother and now regularly visited Clara and Lily. At 8 years old, Camilla still struggled with occasional nightmares, but she was adapting well to a normal life. "Hi, Camilla. Come on in, dear. I came to show you my grade on the math test," Camilla said proudly, showing a paper with a large red A. "The teacher said I'm doing great." Clara hugged the girl affectionately. Since all the children had been rescued, she had become a maternal figure to many of them, helping in their reintegration into society. It was an emotionally challenging job, but one that gave deep meaning to her life. "I'm so proud of you, Camilla. Your grandmother must be thrilled." "She is, and she said I can come to the special dinner tomorrow." The special dinner Camilla referred to was a celebration Eleanor had organized to officially mark the end of the legal proceedings. Ronald Dean had been sentenced to 25 years in prison, while Mayor Arthur Bishop received a 30-year sentence. Marlene and others involved had also been sentenced to significant prison terms. More important than the convictions, however, was what had been built from the tragedy. With the money recovered from the criminals' bank accounts, plus the resources Richard had allocated, a foundation was created to support child victims of exploitation and abuse. Clara had become the foundation's main coordinator, using her personal experience to help other families. "Clara," said Eleanor, arriving in the afternoon for her daily visit, "I have some news about Michael's case." Michael was one of the rescued children who had been separated from his biological parents when he was only 2. Through the tireless work of Clara and the Foundation's team, they had managed to locate the family, who had been searching for him for 3 years. "Did we find the parents?" "Yes. They're coming from Ohio tomorrow for the reunion. The DNA tests confirmed he is indeed their son." Clara felt tears of joy in her eyes. Every successful family reunion was a personal victory for her, a way to transform her own suffering into something positive for others. "And what about little Anna?" Clara asked about another rescued child. "We haven't been able to locate her biological family yet, but there are 3 families interested in adoption. We'll be doing the evaluations next week. I need to talk to Anna before any decision is made. I want to make sure she feels comfortable with the process." This was one of the characteristics that made Clara so special in her work. She never made decisions about the children without including them in the process, respecting their opinions and feelings. Richard arrived late in the afternoon, as had become his custom. In recent months, the family ties between all of them had strengthened in a way none of them had expected. Richard had discovered in Clara not only the sister his late sister Catherine always mentioned, but also a courageous person whose dedication to the children constantly inspired him. "How was your day at the factory?" Clara asked. "Productive. We finalized the project for the special chocolates for the new support center's inauguration. The new support center was an ambitious project that would combine psychological assistance, supplementary education, and recreational activities for children who had gone through trauma. It was set to open the following month in a modern building constructed specifically for that purpose." And Frank, how is he adapting to his new position? Frank had become the administrative director of the foundation, using his accounting experience to ensure that all resources were used as efficiently as possible. His cooperation with the authorities and his genuine remorse had resulted in a suspended sentence, allowing him to contribute positively to repairing some of the damage he had helped cause. "He's completely dedicated. I think he found a way to atone for his past." "We all did," Clara said thoughtfully. "Sometimes the darkest moments of our lives show us who we really are and what truly matters." That evening, during dinner at the Vance's main house, the entire extended family gathered. Besides Clara and Lily, some of the rescued children who had become a regular part of their lives were present, along with Mr. Morris and his new wife, and even Anna Peterson, the cleaning lady who had provided crucial information at the beginning of the investigation. "I'd like to make a toast," Richard said, raising his glass. "A year ago, none of us could have imagined that we would be here today, united as a family, celebrating not only our victory over injustice, but especially the love we discovered for one another." "And I'd like to add something," said Eleanor, also standing up. "Clara, your courage not only saved Lily and the other children, but it also taught us that one determined person can make a difference in the world, no matter how great the obstacles." Clara was moved by her sister's words. "Eleanor, you gave me something I had lost, hope, and more than that, you gave me a real family." Lily, sitting between Clara and Eleanor, looked around the table with satisfaction. "Now we have the biggest family in the world," she declared, making everyone laugh. And the happiest too, Clara added, hugging her daughter. After dinner, while the children played in the garden under the supervision of the adults, Clara and Eleanor walked together through the rose bushes that now bloomed in abundance. "Clara," Eleanor said hesitantly, "there's something I've wanted to ask you for months, but I never found the courage. What is it? Do you remember me when we were little, before we were separated?" Clara stopped walking and looked deeply into her sister's eyes. "I remember fragments. A girl with brown hair who sang to me when I was scared. Someone who shared the last cookie at dinner with me. And most of all, I remember a feeling of safety when you were around. I have those memories too. They were what led me to recognize Lily that day at the patisserie. She has your eyes, but she has gestures that reminded me of you. Fate is mysterious, isn't it? It separated us as children, but used my daughter to bring us back together. And it allowed us to save so many other children in the process." They continued walking in comfortable silence, each lost in thought about the extraordinary journey that had brought them there. "Eleanor," Clara said finally, "thank you for never giving up, even when everything seemed impossible." "Family doesn't give up on family," Eleanor replied simply. "That's how it always should have been." When they returned to the others, they found Lily asleep in Richard's lap, while the other children were still playing energetically. The scene was one of absolute peace, a stark contrast to the chaos and suffering that had dominated their lives just months before. "I think it's time to take our princess home," Clara said softly. "Our princess," Eleanor repeated, liking the sound of the words. "She really belongs to all of us, doesn't she? She does, and she always will." As they prepared to leave, Clara looked one more time at the family she had found, at the children she had helped save, and at the new life she had built from the ashes of so much suffering. There were scars that would never completely disappear, painful memories that would occasionally return. But there was also love, hope, and the certainty that sometimes even the darkest stories can have happy endings. Carrying a sleeping Lily in her arms, Clara walked towards her home, knowing that for the first time in years, her daughter would sleep in absolute safety, surrounded by the unconditional love of a family that had chosen to fight for her until the end. In the quiet of the Greenwich night, a new story of love, courage, and redemption continued to be written, one happy page at a time. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you so much.